BJ Mafia, what's poppin'? So the NBA All-Star Game is just around the corner, and February 2nd, the NBA will be releasing the full rosters in both the Eastern and Western Conference for this year's All-Star Game. Now, the NBA already released last week the starters in both teams, and we also saw that LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo will both be the captains. But as you guys can see from the title of today's video, I'm gonna be talking about my Western Conference reserves in this year's All-Star Game. I'm gonna briefly talk about the starters, and then I'm gonna get right into my reserves. So let's get right into today's video. Now, like I said, I'm sure you guys are all very well aware and familiar with who the starters are gonna be, but I'm gonna briefly go down this list. In the Western Conference, we've got Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Zion Williamson, and Nikola Jokic. I don't have a problem with this list. I think Nikola Jokic is a top 3 candidate for this year's MVP race. He probably is the leader for the MVP race. LeBron James has obviously been playing out of his mind, and he's about to pass the all-time scoring record and pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Everybody else on this list, including Steph Curry, I know he missed 3 weeks, is absolutely deserving to be a starter, and I know Zion's been a little bit banged up. I don't really have a problem with the Western Conference starters. Let's actually get into my reserves though. Now, getting into my first reserve in the Western Conference, in the backcourt, I've got Ja Morant. Now, I won't lie. If you guys have been following me on Twitter and you guys have been following me on the channel for a while, you all know that I've been pushing the propaganda and my agenda that the Memphis Grizzlies are overrated and this team is not gonna go very far, right? They're a great regular season team. I love how young and scrappy this team is, but this team has always had a target on their back, and I just don't believe in this team's playoff success. Having said all of that, Ja Morant is still one of the best young guards in the game. He's an absolute elite talent, insane athleticism off the charts, and Ja Morant is honestly one of the most fun players in the game to watch. Like, as much as I really don't like watching the Memphis Grizzlies play, I respect the hell out of Ja Morant and the product that he kind of puts out there. I think he's a phenomenal talent, and he's absolutely deserving to be an all-star this year. Ja Morant is a phenomenal, young, talented player. He deserves to be an all-star. Really, nothing else needs to be said about that. Now, moving into my other backcourt player in the Western Conference as a reserve, give me Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been one of the best players in the NBA this year. He's actually made Oklahoma City a lot more respectable this season, even with the injuries to Chet Holmgren and the limited amount of talent that's really on this roster outside of Pokusevski, Josh Giddey, and maybe Dort as well too. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's playing at an MVP level. He's not an MVP candidate, at least not a top 5 candidate, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been doing some phenomenal things this season. I would love to see him in the All-Star Game, and I think he should be a lock for this year's All-Star Game. Now, moving into the front court reserves in the Western Conference, give me Utah Jazz's forward, Lauri Markkanen, aka the Finisher. It has been a revelation to watch Lauri Markkanen this season. This is something that Chicago Bulls and both Cleveland Cavalier fans wanted to see out of Lauri Markkanen. This was something that everybody was very well aware that he had the potential to be, but now that he gets an opportunity in Utah to be the #1 scoring option, he's been the catalyst for why the Utah Jazz have had so much success, and Lauri Markkanen truly has balled out. He's insanely efficient this season, and he's doing a great job this year, really carrying the Utah Jazz as the #1 option. Markkanen is the only player in the NBA averaging over 23 points a game this season while still shooting over 40+% from behind the arc. Lauri Markkanen is doing some phenomenal things. Lauri Markkanen should be a lock for this year's All-Star Game, and he should win Most Improved Player. All jokes and all bias aside. Now, sticking in the front court in the Western Conference, I'm also going to take Domantas Sabonis. Now, Domantas Sabonis, we've known that in his time in Indiana and also when he was in Oklahoma City, he had a lot of potential and he really had an opportunity to flourish. But now that we're really seeing him in Sacramento, a lot more developed with a great head coach, and now De'Aaron Fox really taking that next step up. I think both of their games really complement one another, and Domantas Sabonis has been balling out this season. He's one of the best passing big men in the game. We know he can run the floor, he can bring the ball up the court, and Domantas Sabonis is absolutely deserving to be in this year's All-Star Game. Him and De'Aaron Fox have led Sacramento to be one of the best teams in the Western Conference as of right now. We'll see if it's sustainable. We'll see if it leads to some playoff success, but you got to be happy for the Sacramento Kings and what they've been doing. A team and a franchise that's been struggling my entire life. They're finally getting it right. They're finally getting it together. They've got 2 premier talents, and Domantas Sabonis is one of them. Get him in the All-Star Game. And then the last player I have in the front court for the Western Conference is going to come with Anthony Davis. Now, this was a very difficult one for me to put in because Anthony Davis has only appeared in 27 games so far this season. But when Anthony Davis is on the court, and we sure as hell saw it this year, he's one of the most dominant players in the game, and it is just so injury prone. It is ridiculous to see. As soon as he comes back, it feels like everybody's just anticipating another injury because this has just been how his career has progressed from his time in New Orleans to LA. And while he's having a dominant season when he's on the court, it's hard for me to put him in the All-Star game in 27 games only played. but I gotta put him in there because he is Anthony Davis. He's one of the premier talents in this game, and Anthony Davis still deserves to be an All-Star. Now, my last 2 wildcard spots in this year's All-Star game is gonna come with the other Sacramento duo in De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox has really taken that next step up. You've seen him really develop. He's gotten a much better three-point shot. It's still not exactly where you wanna see him be, but De'Aaron Fox has steadily improved his jumper over the course of these last couple of seasons. He's one of the fastest players in the game, and De'Aaron Fox is obviously a very good passer, a great 3-and-D player, and you've really seen him and Domantas Sabonis take that next step up, having Sacramento be a respectable team, and that's why they're winning. Get De'Aaron Fox into this year's All-Star game. And my last spot that's gonna go in the Western Conference Reserves is gonna come with former #1 overall pick out of the University of Georgia, Anthony Edwards. And honestly, Anthony Edwards, this was a very difficult one for me to put in because his numbers don't really jump out to you. You'd say Anthony Edwards is averaging about 25-5, and he's a respectable shooter. But there's just something about Anthony Edwards' game that I think is just so fitting for the All-Star game. Anthony Edwards is one of the most young and electrifying and athletic players in the game, and I think that Anthony Edwards is absolutely deserving to be in this year's All-Star game. I do think that he's a fringe All-Star. I don't think that he's a lock, but Minnesota's really turned the corner. I believe that they're 11-4 in the month of January. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what I read this morning. And also, the Timberwolves are just playing significantly better, like I said, and they're the #5 seed in the Western Conference as of right now. I really feel like Minnesota's now taking that next step up. It took them some time to really get used to this new core and this new system that they've got in place, especially with Rudy Gobert, and especially once they get Karl Anthony Towns back. But Minnesota's a very good team, and they're led by, obviously, Anthony Edwards. I think he's going to be a fringe All-Star, and I think he's going to squeak in. And yes, because I have Anthony Edwards in there, that means I had to leave Damian Lillard off this list. And I promise on everything, I'm not taking Damian Lillard off this list because he just dropped 60 on my Jazz the other night. Damian Lillard out of Weber State is one of my favorite players in the game of basketball from the time he came into the league till now. I mean, it's always going to be Dame time. I got nothing but love for Dame. I think he's a great, humble guy, and I love the fact that he wants to stay in Portland. Beautiful city, by the way. And he wants to go and try to compete every single year, even when it looks like Portland is never going to get a big-time free agent. I respect Damian Lillard, but I just feel like this is Anthony Edwards' time to get in there. He's the young gun. He's the young, high-flying kid. And while Damian Lillard's doing incredible things, and we know the kind of talent that he is, one of the most clutch players in the game, and like I said, he just had a 60-piece on my Jazz. Damian Lillard can do it all. We know this, but I just feel like it's time to pass the torch. I think it's time for Anthony Edwards to get in. Even though Dame's averaging 30 points a game, I'm sorry, dog. I gotta put Anthony Edwards in there. But if you guys enjoyed today's video, man, make sure you guys drop me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second and it helps me and the channel out tremendously. And if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe bell to stay tuned for more NBA content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure you guys go follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below. I also just created an Instagram and both a TikTok page last week, producing and putting out all of my sports content. So you guys, make sure you guys go follow that. It's the exact same handle as my Twitter, VBrettJames1. Like I said, the link tree will be in the description down below. But thanks again for sticking around throughout the whole video. Brett James, AKA BJ. I'm out, y'all. Peace.